Hello YouTube pilot friends, and welcome to another exciting video from me, Simon. Today we're looking at drift and how it works in the aeroplane. Drift is one of those things that people sometimes find difficult to understand, but really it's quite easy, I suppose. So, let's look at the case we want to fly from point A to point B. We've got a wind which is blowing from our left hand side. Now we'll talk about wind in a little bit more detail in a moment. But just look what happens if we point the aeroplane at point B and just fly straight ahead, doing nothing. Well, as you can see, we don't end up at point B. We end up somewhere very different, and it's not really the best way to get somewhere. So what do we do about this? Well, first of all, we could try just pointing the aeroplane at point B, and when it's no longer pointing at point B, point it there again and keep doing that until we get there. But that doesn't work very well because we end up with the flight path which looks like this. And as you can see, that flight path is hopeless. So, if we make no correction, it's no good. And if we make corrections all the time, it doesn't really work. We just end up eventually drifting around and around until we fly directly into wind. And then we've flown a very long way and we end up flying quite slowly as well. So neither of these are good situations. Thinking about wind, it confuses people a lot, I know. And there are two aspects to wind, I suppose, as a pilot that you have to be aware of. One is takeoff and landing. At that point, when you take off, let's say, the aeroplane is firmly fixed on the ground. And there is genuinely a wind acting on the aeroplane. It flows over the keel surfaces and it tries to turn the aircraft into the wind. And the same applies when you actually land and put the wheels on the tarmac. The aeroplane is on the ground and the wind is blowing on the aeroplane. However, the instant we take off, the situation changes. Because now, the ground is superfluous. The only reason we want to know about the ground is so we don't hit anything and so that we can get from point A to point B. But the aeroplane doesn't know anything about the ground. It only knows that it's in the air. If you imagine the air is like a huge tank of water or a river, the river flows along. If you're in a boat on that river and it's flowing and you close your eyes, you really don't have any huge sensation that you're moving, because in relation to that water, you could be stationary but moving along with the flow of the river. And the same thing applies to the air. So in terms of aviation, the wind, we need to be aware of it in terms of getting from A to B or C to D or wherever we're going. We need to be aware of it in terms of landing, but wind doesn't really affect the way the aircraft performs in the air. The airplane knows nothing about it. It just flies through an air mass, and that air mass moves in relation to the ground. With that in mind then, we need to find a direction to fly in the air which compensates for the air's movement relative to the ground. And we can calculate a drift angle. What we do is, once we've calculated that drift angle or estimated it, we turn the aircraft by an amount, a calculated amount, into wind. And once we fly that heading, we will constantly drift, as we did before, towards our track. However, because now we're correcting, our track takes us where we want to go. So that's drift. A helpful way of remembering it is we always drift from heading to track. Next time we'll have a look at how we can apply compensations if our drift allowance isn't perhaps quite correct, and we'll look at drift lines which we showed in the first flight planning video. Thanks for watching and see you soon. Bye.